Welcome, everyone, to COSMOPOLITICS. We are so glad to have everyone here virtually. I know we have some folks that are coming in, and welcome, welcome. I am thrilled to gather with you all this evening, even if it's virtual. I sincerely hope you are all safe, healthy, and well. We have a very exciting program this evening, and I'm honored to kick things off as president of the Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee. Tonight, we gather to recognize and celebrate three incredible feminist leaders in our community: Alejandra Gutierrez, Wendy Sims Moten, and a very special tribute to Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson. I know we have many of our local elected leaders joining us. We're so grateful for your support. On behalf of SBWPC, we welcome all of you and are happy to have you join us. So SBWPC has an incredible board of feminists that I have the joy of working alongside. If you don't know them already, let me introduce them to you. We have on our executive committee, Amanda Schung, our Vice President of Organization, Andrea Martinez-Cohen, our Vice President of Policy, Kate Parker, our Secretary, and Catherine Sweeson as our Chief Financial Officer. Our board members are Vicki Allen, EJ Bora, Anna Everett, Elsa Granados, Hather Hammett, Bev Herbert, Charlotte Gillette-Moore, Lisa Gurovitz, Jacqueline Inda, Karina Jew, Carol Cater, Sandy Kievman, Pam Tambo, Jennifer Smith, Stacy Little, Paula Lopez, and Christina Pizarro. This is truly a mighty group of board members. I have the privilege of sharing some remarks before we begin our program. I want to share a little bit about the important work that SBWPC accomplished this year, and then some words about the election. 2020 has certainly been a historic year for many reasons. We were thrilled to kick the year off with the Women's March and our annual member meeting. Pretty soon after that, COVID-19 forced all of us to quickly respond and shift. I am so proud that SBWPC didn't miss a beat. We quickly established and started holding our board meetings virtually and started working on how to shift our programming to a virtual format. Our committees were supported with access to Zoom accounts and any other support they needed to continue the work. The Legislation and Advocacy Committee continued to write letters and track important legislation. Our Membership Committee continued their important work to keep us connected to our members. Our Media Committee continued supporting our mission. Candidate Development held a phenomenal Run Like a Woman training virtually. And of course, our Elections and Appointments Committee transitioned our entire endorsement process to a virtual format. A lot of our work this year was focused on the November election. In this election, we endorsed feminist candidates at every level of government. Throughout our endorsement process, we sought to support candidates who would be outspoken champions for the feminist values that we've always prioritized and for our positions on important issues. Our endorsed candidates ran positive campaigns, gave voice to their communities, and lifted each other's campaigns along the way. To our candidates, only you know the magnitude of what you faced in this unprecedented election. You should be proud of your campaigns, and it was an honor to support your candidacies. Although the results locally are not completely finalized, there are many results that we can be very happy about. So many of our endorsed feminist candidates appear to be headed to victory, which is wonderful news for our communities. While not every one of our endorsed candidates will ultimately win their election, We are profoundly proud of their candidacies and for stepping up to leadership to run and to champion our issues. Now, before we get to our program, I want to talk just a little bit about the election, and especially about hope. Hope, I believe, is not a feeling. It's something that requires work. Hope requires our action, our intentional work to believe in hope, to spread hope to others, and in the words of, I believe, our president-elect, to keep the faith. For 4 years, we have marched, we have demonstrated, we have made phone calls, we have sent texts, we've donated, we have kept the faith. And today, this week, we believe the people have spoken. And we believe we will have the first woman vice president with Senator Kamala Harris. There will be much to say about the election, what made the difference, how it was accomplished. But I do want to say that I believe at the end of the day, this election will have been successful because of the grassroots, and specifically because of Black organizing, Black empowerment, and the leadership of Black women like Stacey Abrams and many other women in places like Georgia, and because of progressive Latino organizing that worked tirelessly for years in places like Arizona. I take hope in this because I see a lot of our own work as being grassroots. The Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee is not interested in a moderate agenda. We want nothing short of full social, political, gender, racial, and economic equality. That means we defend the right to safe and legal abortion. We work to elect feminist champions. We seek economic justice in our policies, and we fight for racial justice because we know our feminism is intersectional. And it means locally that we stand with racial justice leaders like Healing Justice Santa Barbara. We speak out in support of inclusive sex education. We fight to defend and expand LGBTQ+ rights. We work in coalition with other groups on environmental justice, and we work hard to build the bench of future feminist leaders. This is important work, and we couldn't do it without our amazing and supportive members, our dedicated board, and the mighty group of past presidents that lift us up behind the scenes. So tonight, with feelings of relief and with renewed optimism, we gather and we celebrate 3 amazing women in our community. And tomorrow, we get back to work because there's no back to normal. And we've got to get to work to dismantle as much of the harm we've experienced in the last 4 years as possible, and to defend the results of this election. We've got to confront the realities of who we are as America and as a community. And we have to work to keep pushing back against the organized, sexist, and racist efforts here in our own communities. This mission calls on us to continue working to make a reality, a more just, more feminist future for the generations to come. So like I say at the end of my messages in our newsletters, adelante, forward. Thank you. Now, let's get to our awards presentation. We will start with the Rising Star Award. The Rising Star Award is presented to Councilmember Alejandra Gutierrez in recognition of her courage to challenge the status quo in order to create a more inclusive community. Alejandra was elected to the Santa Barbara City Council in November of 2019. As a first-time candidate, we saw in Alejandra her determination and fierce commitment to her community. She was inspired to run because she knew her community on the East Side deserved better representation. In her first year on the council, she has hit the ground running. She speaks up, she asks tough questions, and she works hard. All while knowing that these spaces of power were not created for women or for women of color. Navigating this space is not easy, and only she knows truly how difficult we're sure it can be. But throughout, she leads with empathy and resolve. We look forward to continuing to watch her leadership on the City Council, and we are so happy to honor her tonight with the 2020 SBWPC Rising Star Award.
Thank you.
Before I hand it over to Alejandra to say a few words, we are especially honored that Congressman Carvajal, who is joining us this evening, also wishes to recognize our awardees with certificates of recognition. Thank you very much to Congressman Carvajal and his incredible team. And you should be able to see a picture of the lovely certificate. With that, congratulations, Alejandra, and I welcome you to say a few words.
Thank you, Luz, and thank you for this lovely recognition, everyone. I'm so honored to be honored tonight by the Women's Political Committee. For me, it's an organization that is very important to me and definitely dear to my heart because it's a group of women. And I strongly believe that we're a force to be recognized. When women stand together, women can create positive change. I see it in the schools that I work with. When moms get together, they change the children's lives. I've seen how when women come together, they change communities. Women have a power to heal and to unite. So thank you so much. And I'm a rising star because I'm a product of all of you in my community. I could not rise to the occasion if I didn't have the support that I have now. I definitely want to say thank you to my colleagues, Mayor Murillo, Councilmember Sneddon, and Councilmember Harmon. It's tough to be in leadership and politics, but I think when women come together, we give each other hope. So thank you so much, and I look forward to keep on working really hard. This recognition is a big motivation to also help others that are taking the courage to lead and be part of this leadership and rising to the occasion to take leadership in office. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alejandra. And our next presentation is the Roses Award. Now, the Roses Award is a very special recognition we bestow on a feminist that has demonstrated incredible service and leadership in support of our shared feminist values. The 2020 Roses Award is presented to Santa Barbara Unified School Board member Wendy Sims Moten in recognition of her exemplary public service, strengthening families through education, equity, and advocating for racial justice. Wendy has a long history of incredible leadership and service to our community. She serves as the executive director of First Five Santa Barbara County, which is an agency that connects parents of children 0 to 5 with important information and services that support their child's healthy development and school readiness. She was elected to the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Trustees in 2016 and was just reelected this week to another term. Congratulations. Wendy is a tremendous feminist and leader. She is an inspiring voice. She is a fierce advocate for children and public education. She lifts up the voices of students and people around her, and she is a caring and supportive mentor to so many women, including me, I will add. It is my honor to present the 2020 SBWPC Roses Award to Wendy Sims Moten. And before I hand it over to Wendy to say a few words, we're honored that Congressman Carvajal recognized Wendy with a certificate of recognition, which you should be able to see on your screen. Again, thank you so much, Congressman Carvajal. With that, congratulations, Wendy, and we welcome you to say a few words.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here tonight and so excited to receive this honor from the Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee, and to see this is so beautiful to be able to be part of this. I didn't want to put the roses down when they were delivered today. I also just share this honor with, roses says they such beauty and they have such a tough exterior, and that is who we are as women. We're beautiful and we're tough, and we can weather any storms that come our way. And so I would be remiss if I didn't also just honor with this award 4 wonderful roses that in my life who are spirits that are guiding me from above. And that is my great-grandmother, Cora D. Sims, my grandmother, Queen Esther Sims, my mother, Georgia Ray Hubbard, and my mother-in-law, Rosa Moten. Each of them said they had to make a better way, and they showed much strength in what they would have to do. Therefore, they are, I am. And so I am what they do and have put inside of me to continue to do. And I so appreciate also serving and leading along with my sister board members on the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board. We are an all-women board. What can I say in terms of that? And I just want to thank the SBWPC for this honor, and I so appreciate it. And I want to do just a small tweak on the song of Helen Reddy, who talked about I Am Woman. I want to honor each of you that are on here tonight, those who have supported me, those are rising leaders, rising stars, and I certainly want to also congratulate Councilwoman Alejandra Gutierrez and also Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson. I want to say this to each of you. We are women. Hear us roar in numbers too big to ignore. And we know too much to go and pretend, because we've heard it all before. And we've been down there on the floor. No one's ever gonna keep us down again. Oh yes, we are wise, but it's wisdom born of pain. Yes, we paid the price, but look how much we've gained. If and when we have to, we can do anything. We are strong. We are invincible. We are women. Hear us roar. Again, thank you so much for this award. I appreciate it, and it gives me inspiration to keep to fight for our youngest little citizens. I have the best day job ever with our young kids, and I also get to celebrate and support our kids in school. So thank you again so much for this. And to see the women of color that are rising up, we want to continue to support and nurture them and make sure we're building, as Luz had said, building a good, strong bench as leadership goes in the future. So thank you so much for this award.
Thank you so much, Wendy and Alejandra, for your work, your advocacy, and your leadership. SBWPC is proud to stand with you, and we know that with you, our communities are in good hands. So we have one more certificate of recognition from Congressman Salud Carvajal, and that goes to our star honoree of the evening. We thank Congressman Carvajal for his many years of support to SBWPC and for getting these certificates to our awardees tonight. And of course, many congratulations on your re-election. We need you in DC. So let's see a certificate of recognition for our wonderful star honoree tonight, Hannah-Beth Jackson. You should be able to see that on your screen. Now, it's time to celebrate the feminist champion that needs no introduction, our Wonder Woman, Hannah-Beth Jackson.
Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman.
Visionary, courageous, strong, fearless, trailblazing, loving, and empathetic. These words encapsulate Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson. Senator Jackson has been an inspiration to me ever since I came to this country, as I am sure she has been to you. On behalf of our committee, I invite you to travel in sisterhood with Senator Jackson through her feminist journey and recognize her enormous contributions to women's rights. I hope you enjoyed the trip.
And now you understand even more why we call Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson our Wonder Woman. Good evening, everyone. I'm Paula Lopez, member of the WPC Board of Directors. I join you along with Dr. Lois Phillips for what we hope will be an enlightening and wonderful conversation with Senator Jackson.
And we have 5 people who have recorded their messages for you, Senator Jackson. And after each one, Paula and I will be taking a deep dive into what was revealed. So be prepared.
Prepared for anything tonight because I know it's a windy, blustery night out there. So hopefully everybody's internet will be fine tonight. But as you know, in productions like this, we've learned to roll with the punches during COVID and times of quarantine. So thank you for being with us this evening. Before we get started though, we did want to present Hannah-Beth Jackson with a plaque. No, we don't have a plaque. We wanted to do something a little bit different. So we did want to present her with the roses. And if you notice, the roses are white, a significant color in feminist history. And also you have a little box there in front of you. And if I can ask you to open it. And please accept this small token of our appreciation for all that you have done as a Wonder Woman for the women of our community and in the state and even in the nation. Congratulations.
There it is. There it is. When you're ever at a loss for words, something to wear.
All right.
Well, we thought even maybe your grandchildren might want to like run around the house in that. I know you have a little one, Ellery, and she's, I'm sure, going to be able to put on that cape of a Wonder Woman as if she's anything like her mom and her grandma. So
Well, she already has one of her own.
okay, well now you can be twins. Thank you for being a good sport and putting that on. So we were really curious though. We saw a lot of the pictures. We hope you enjoyed the video and the slideshow from the Eskin Jackson archives. But we wanted to know what it takes to form a Wonder Woman. So we decided to reach all the way back to your childhood and to hear from your childhood neighbor, Dr. Lawrence Dworet.
You found him.
My name is Dr. Lawrence Dworet, and I have known Hannah-Beth ever since she was a little girl. We actually lived side by side in a middle-class area of Newton, Massachusetts, and I was luckily on the uphill side of our fence, because when we had snowball fights, I needed all the advantage I could get to keep up with the ferocity of her arm. And worse was when we played baseball, because she could throw the ball so fast that it scared the living bejesus out of all of us. And when Little League said a girl could not play, we literally jumped for joy at the thought that we never had to face her. And I think that was one of the catalytic events in her life to make her fight for women's rights. And luckily, I moved to Santa Barbara, California years later in 1992, and I've had the privilege of meeting her again and working for her on numerous campaigns along with my wife. And we're very, very proud to call her a wonderful friend and a terrific leader for all the right causes.
Thank you, Laurie.
Congratulations, Hannah-Beth, on all your many, many years of service. And I wish we could clone you and keep you forever.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, we were curious when we saw this clip from Dr. Dworet. We were wondering if there's how much truth that is to the baseball story, because we, of course, I know you've shared that on the campaign trail. But what inspired you? What was in you that inspired you to kind of buck tradition, go and play where the boys played? Do you remember any role models that you might have had that inspired you and motivated you in that way?
Well, I think the initial motivation was what I had been taught by my parents and grandparents, and that is that in America, if you work hard, do your best, and play by the rules, you can do or be anything. That was ingrained in me as a very little girl, and it's something that I believed. And when I wasn't allowed to play Little League because I was a girl, even though I was the best guy on the team, that really challenged me. That upset and offended me that in America, that was the promise made, but it wasn't the promise kept. So that, of course, got me going. But yes, I came from a family of incredibly accomplished women, even back in a day when women really weren't given the opportunity to be successful. I had a great aunt who was the first woman ever to receive an endowed chair at a university in Boston, Boston State Teachers College. She was a doctor of philosophy. She had a sister who was only the second woman to practice dentistry in the state of in the city of Boston. And of course, when I took up the game of tennis a few years later, when I wasn't allowed to play baseball, my tennis teacher, my tennis coach, was one of the greatest women tennis players of all time, a woman named Hazel Whiteman, who donated the Whiteman Cup to the game of tennis, who was one of the first women to graduate from the University of California at Berkeley. These were the women who inspired me. And so I never thought I couldn't do what I wanted to do and become who I wanted to become. Just didn't cross my mind until I got to high school and college, and I was told that I needed to know my place. That didn't work.
How did that sit with you? And what actions did you take? Do you remember?
I continued with my tennis. I went on to college. I wanted to be a lawyer because it was a time when social justice was really very important in the, for many of you, I mean, this was the 60s. There was a big war going on. Our young men were being conscripted into the military without their permission. They weren't allowed to vote, so they didn't have a say. Helen Reddy wrote her song, Wendy. I used to sing that song when it first came out back in 1971. So the movement started, and I immediately recognized that what was being discussed were things of equality, of equity, of fairness, of democracy, and that we all have a voice and that we should be entitled to have that voice heard and have it respected.
Was there anything that stood out to you in particular in terms of the injustices that you saw? I mean, you mentioned you were, raised in the middle of the civil rights movement, but anything in particular that really got to you?
Well, I think what really got to me was listening to Martin Luther King. He did his "I Have a Dream" speech. And there were words that he said that just have always stuck with me, and that's a long time ago, when he said there hopes that there would be a day when his children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And that, to me, has actually been a motivator and a set of ideals that I have tried to live by, that I judge every person, or I don't actually judge, I accept every person based upon the content of their character and nothing else.
You touched a little bit about on how important sports were in your life, and they continue to be. How did that really shape you, your love of sports, impact you in terms of your self-confidence?
Well, sports, I think, are a critical component for anyone to gain self-confidence. I was a tennis player. I played mostly singles, a little bit of doubles. But, when you go out on a tennis court, you either win or you lose. And you can't blame anybody else if you lose. You've got to take responsibility for your actions. And of course, if you win, you get to enjoy the glory of victory. And if you lose, you have to accept the humbleness of defeat, something I never liked. So that really inspired me, but it was something where the opportunity to be competitive, the opportunity to excel, to work hard, and to see the results of those achievements, the result of that hard work, is something that I believe is really important even to this day. And whether it's a sport like tennis or whether it's a team sport, when you are one of a group, I think it's really important. Something that was really denied to women of my generation, the ability to be part of a collective where you're not competing with each other, you are collaborating with each other. And in fact, women, generally speaking, have better powers of collaboration. So the opportunity to express those, to enjoy those, to experience those in sports, I think has made an enormous difference in the world that we have today. And seeing young women develop that sense of confidence and pride and independence that's so critical to be successful.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because, we have come to really absorb the power of women. I mean, we gave our Rising Star Award to Alejandra Gutierrez, and when she was receiving that, I was reminded of the power and the impact that young women in particular have had, AOC, and on the national stage. So we know how important, but when you were getting into the arena, when you were thinking about law school, and I think about RBG and what she had to go through in terms of being the only woman in her class. Did you ever experience any kind of discrimination in that regard?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I was a generation after RBG, or most of a generation afterwards. And so there were about 10 or 15% of my law school class was women. But, you know, there was a culture there. There was a misogyny there with law professors, with law firms. I remember a story. I don't even remember the class because I was probably half asleep. But I remember a woman who sat behind me was a year ahead of me. And she walked into class, a lovely woman. She actually was married. So she was fairly young, 23, 24. And she was steaming mad. And this was a lovely woman. I said, what happened? She said, oh, I just went to have an interview with a big law firm in Boston. And I won't use the name. It's one that most people who know Boston law firms would recognize, a very prestigious law firm. She was a brilliant young woman. And she said, do you know, during the interview, they said, we know that you are married. And we wonder, do you use birth control?
Oh my God.
I mean, she was stunned. And the theory was that, well, if she was married and was going to have a family, they didn't want to invest in her because she'd leave the workforce and she'd ask for additional time or try to go part-time because of her family responsibilities. And I've never forgotten that. And the outrage, because this was a fine, fine legal mind. And I'm sure that ultimately she was able to be successful. But there was a little bit of the RBG, that glass ceiling there, where most law firms wouldn't even interview the top of their class women. Most of those women went into government service because they were able to be successful in government jobs, but not in the private sector. And frankly, to this day, we see that there is still that glass ceiling in law firms. Most of the partners in law firms continue to be men, and it continues to have a culture there, and in so many professions, that are very difficult to accept, but that continue, and that's what we need to call them out with.
So we're going to hear from somebody else who knows you well and who was part of your journey, and someone whom you'll find familiar. And then we'll talk a little bit about what was revealed by this friend of yours. So it's time for the next recording.
Hi, Hannah-Beth. I want to congratulate you on being honored tonight. But I want to talk about a moment in time that occurred in 1988 when a group of us got together to talk about women's issues and women's politics in Santa Barbara. That group included you and myself, Lois Phillips, Gail Binion, and a few others. And we spent a lot of time together sharing food and eating dinner and thinking about how we could make a difference. And that was the moment when we all agreed we had a vision, and that vision became the Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee. Here we are, 32 years later, live and healthy, but those were great times when we talked about what did we want to do, how did we want to do it, and we knew that we wanted to have a unique organization, not part of another national organization. Again, that's how the vision was actually implemented, and that's how we became the Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee. Fast forward 1998, and you ran for office, I did, and so did Lois Capps, and we, on hindsight, called it the Year of the Woman. All of us won, and it's been that way ever since. Women have been running for office and winning in Santa Barbara. I want to mention some of the legislation that you passed, because you began at that point in time an illustrious, what I would call illustrious legislative career. There's so many bills that you carried and successfully passed, but I want to focus on those that affect the lives of women and children. That's been a theme of mine for many years. Women in office make a difference for women. So I'm just going to mention three of them. One is the Family Medical Leave Act, and you managed to expand that and enhance how it is used today. You added more population groups that could use it, and you make sure that nobody could retaliate against somebody who was taking family leave. There was also the Equal Pay Act. You managed to pass what we now know is the strongest Equal Pay Act in the country. And the good news is that many other states are copying you. And finally, probably one of my favorites is adding more women, mandating more women on boards and commissions. So once again, I want to say what a difference you've made in the lives of women everywhere. First of all, Santa Barbara, the state of California, and also the United States. So happy retirement. We congratulate you. We think of all the good and happy times you have ahead, and have a wonderful time with those grandchildren of yours. Congratulations, Hannah-Beth.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan.
So how did you feel hearing that? Did that take you down memory lane? Do you remember how this all kind of came together? Because there was some streams of interest bubbling up, and there was a moment, right?
There was a moment. Well, you know, what's so interesting is it all kind of came around food. As you recall. And you know, we started talking and realized that there was a need for collective action, a need for sisterhood. This was so important. You know, we were so isolated from each other. And then we got together and started talking and discovered that we had the same desires and ambitions, that we had experienced the same discrimination and misogyny and harassment. And we just decided, it was really almost spontaneous, that we decided to give it a go. I mean, it was one of those things where I think Gail Binion was friends with Betty Friedan. You know, was one of the mothers of the modern feminist movement. She was coming to Santa Barbara. We were able to co-opt her to come to a little restaurant at the time. We thought we might get 50 people to show up. And before the evening was done, we had signed up 250 women to join the Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee. I mean, the place was jammed. We ran out of food really quickly, which is something that we should never do. But we learned, and it really kicked off what is this organization. It has gone through some fascinating iterations. We now see there's more diversity on the board, more younger women on the board, more women of color. You know, it is the face of our community, which is something we always strove to achieve, but we have a collective goal, and that is equality for women, opportunity, the ability to, again, pursue and succeed in whatever we desire to have. And part of what is a passion for me is making the 21st century workforce more accommodating to women and families. We live in the paradigm for the worker today, it goes back to the 1950s. We don't live in the 1950s. I'm not sure we ever did. I don't know there ever was an Ozzie and Harriet, and there are a lot of people, I'm dating myself, or Father Knows Best. These were visions of the perfect family. You know, the wife would be perfectly coiffed at the end of a day after having cleaned the house and fed the children and had them all bathed and ready for bed. When Daddy came home, handed him his martini, he patted the children on the head, they went off to bed, and she prepared a gourmet, you know, a 9-course gourmet meal. I mean, who the heck ever lived like that? But that was the image of what we were supposed to be. And of course, it was ridiculous. And today's world, we know women are working. We know we work because either we have to work or we desire to have a career, or our own ability to recognize that we also have needs to be with our families as new parents, to be able to take time off to bond with our newborns. And in today's hopefully changing world, we're finding more young men who also want to participate in the raising of their families and need to have that flexibility as well. So it's a win-win when we can make it happen. And certainly equal pay. You know, Susan, you and I have been working on that issue for what, 40 years? And suddenly I was able to get that bill passed with almost unanimous support. So I call it lovingly my 35-year overnight success.
Well, I want to ask you another question before I lose my turn here, and that has to do with the women lawyers, because there was a lot, we talk about what was bubbling up then. In '86, really, there was this incredibly well-funded campaign, anti-choice. And as I recall the beginnings, that really was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And we saw a lot of things that needed to be confronted with some other alternative voices. But you were also involved in 10 years later, after the Women's Political Committee formed, in the formation of the women lawyers. And I wonder if you can briefly speak to the fact that you saw a need there within your own profession for women to come together in a similar collective, collaborative way. Why were you interested in doing that as well?
Well, in part because of the same problems that we were having, the level of discrimination, of mansplaining that has always driven me crazy, but all of the condescension and the lack of respect. We'd get interrupted all the time. And certainly, the Santa Barbara courthouse, if you've ever walked in there, you better not walk in there with high heels, because you will break an ankle. I mean, the place was not inviting to women. There was almost like, if you are female, do not enter. And certainly as a lawyer, and pass through the bar, and be sitting there at counsel table. In fact, I remember I used to go into courtrooms in the old courthouse, and the desks were so high that I used to go over and ask the bailiff for 2 large Yellow Pages books so that I could put them down on the seat so I could sit on them, so I didn't look like I was like this, right? I needed to stand up. You need to be able to present with that level of authority, and it wasn't easy. And there were not too many women lawyers in the community. We were not treated with respect, and so we decided we were going to put together an organization, particularly because when there were these annual Bar Association dinners, it would be the guys going up to Santa Maria to have a barbecue that get terribly over intoxicated, misbehave, and it was just no place that the women wanted to be while these men were behaving badly. So we decided we were going to set up our own law association. We also discovered that women lawyers share similar challenges. You work all day, and if you're going home to a family, guess what? Guess who's responsible for dinner? Guess who's responsible for taking care of the kids? And we realized we needed to be able to talk about it, to share the experience, to work together, to find tools and techniques to make our lives a little bit more manageable.
Great. And the partnerships, were women beginning to see changes? It's been 32 years now. No, 22 in the case of the women lawyers. So do you see that things are changing for women in law in terms of partnerships and that
Yes.
kind of respect?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, we're seeing more women partners, but still, in the legal profession, it is still very much, law firms are still very much dominated by men, unless you happen to be a single woman, an unmarried woman without children. And then what we've discovered is that the glass ceiling is, it's a much higher or lower ceiling. It's much easier to overcome that ceiling if you're willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week. And again, in 2020, we need to change our work habits. And of course, I would say that with COVID, we are learning that people can work more from home, have greater flexibility. I think that there are some great opportunities ahead, but also some extreme challenges as a result of what we're going through now.
Right, right. So you've been part of these processes of starting organizations that, and just to add to your legacy, and you've made a huge difference in this small city of ours. And the joy of it is that we can be together in a time like this where some of us have seen each other's careers over many, many decades. And it's fantastic. I know that we have someone else.
We do. In fact, you're talking, Lois, one of the qualities of a Wonder Woman, and when we were talking about this event, we had words out there. And one of them that we, the committee, kept throwing around when we think about you, Hannah-Beth, is that a Wonder Woman is somebody who has strength, yes, and tenacity. And we talked to someone who witnessed those qualities firsthand.
Hi, I'm Janice Rocco, and thanks to Hannah-Beth Jackson, I'm in the state capitol right now. I ran Hannah-Beth's first campaign for the state assembly 22 years ago, and then moved up to Sacramento to work for her. So I've had the opportunity for all these years to watch up close exactly what Hannah-Beth has been able to accomplish in the state legislature for all of us. Hannah-Beth was a leader from the day she walked in the doors here. She was able to chair environmental committees during her assembly years and chaired the Judiciary Committee during her time in the Senate. She chaired the Legislative Women's Caucus, both as an assembly member and later, obviously, as a senator. Hannah-Beth has been able to accomplish an amazing amount in the issues that we care about, in large part due to her tenacity and her willingness to just persevere. I think her colleagues would tell you that with some of her legislation, if she talked to them 3 or 4 times about it and they hadn't committed to vote for it yet, they knew that she'd be back for the 5th or 6th conversation until she got them to say yes and agree to vote for the legislation. And that's how she's been able to accomplish so much, whether it's her bill on women on corporate boards, or pay equity, or protecting students who've been victims of sexual assault, and the whole host of issues that she's worked on that we care about. She's gone toe-to-toe with anybody she needed to fight on behalf of our constituents and on for the women of California. And that's meant taking on the oil industry over and over again, taking on the State Chamber of Commerce over and over again. I don't think we've had a year where Hannah-Beth hasn't appeared on the list of bills that the Chamber of Commerce has prioritized to kill. But that's because she's doing what's right for the women of the state, for the people of the state, in making the progress that we want to see. And I am very proud to call her my friend, and I hope you enjoy this evening.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you so much, Janice. And, you know, she talked about your ability to, push through things, reach across the aisle when you needed to get things done. And, with so much polarization in our nation, I mean, we are fatigued with the polarization. How did you get so much accomplished then during your time in Sacramento? What was it that gave you that ability to push things through?
Well, part of it is, someone said it, you kind of peck like a duck on someone's ankles until they say yes. But I think seriously that my method of legislating was to listen to the concerns that were expressed by those who were not inclined to support the legislation, to hear what their concerns were and to try to work with them. Now, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. But the goal is, and I always say this, the goal is to get to yes. So if you are a tennis player, you know that there's a sweet spot on the racket. And what you try to do is get to that sweet spot where everybody is there. You give a little, you get a little. It's very difficult and probably not good practice to leave the negotiating table with one person feeling like they had won and a person feeling like they've lost. Everybody either feels like they won or they feel like they've lost, and then you've won. So you have to listen, and I think that's a quality that's missing today because people aren't willing to talk to each other. They talk over each other. Part of my frustration, though, is you've got to start from the same set of facts. So I'll give you an example. The Chamber of Commerce, I take with great pride when I do bills that they consider job killers. And what does that mean? It means what I'm trying to do is move the business community, the employer community, the employer mindset to be more understanding and accepting of the fact that employees are not your slaves. Employees are people who work for you, but you don't own them. You can't expect that they are going to prioritize you over their children or over a parent when they get sick or over a loved one when you have to take them to the doctor. They've got to understand that we are more than just being workers, that we are human beings and that we all have other needs besides being at the workplace on demand. Now and there's a problem there too, because employers do need to have some idea and reasonable expectation that employees are going to be there to meet with clients and customers and do all those kind of things. And so you try to figure out how do you get the most out of both sets of circumstances. So when it came to equal pay, back in 2014 or 2015, I sat down with a woman who was a lobbyist for the Chamber of Commerce, who was probably one of the best lobbyists in Sacramento. We never agreed, but I respected her. She knew her subject matter. She presented her arguments well and cogently. I brought her into my office and I said to her, I want to work on equal pay. I said, and I know you're one of the best lobbyists here in Sacramento, and I know that you're not paid what your male counterparts are paid, especially when you're probably better at it than they are. So let's work together and make this happen. And you know, we did. And I think that when people are willing to talk with each other and share what their needs are and what their issues are, you can accomplish a lot. So the substance was great. And then you just kind of keep banging away at it until they say yes.
So you're talking about equal pay, and I know you take a lot of pride in that and that you had some help in that. But, you know, one of the areas also that I know that you're passionate about is environmental justice. And how important is that as it pertains to women?
Well, you know, it's interesting because when it comes to exposure to chemicals, you have your farm workers, many of them are women, many of them are pregnant women as well. Women in the fields work because they have to. And we have a real problem with exposure to chemicals and pesticides. And I worked long and very frustratingly, to be honest with you, to try to overcome the notion that farm workers don't matter. And that we need to grow these crops and we need to do it regardless. And it's been, that part has been a real challenge. But raising the issue and mobilizing people from within the community, I think has been critical. And for women, of course, you know, we're the caretakers. We aren't just the life givers, we are the caretakers. And when you have family that's ill, it's women who take care of them. So the whole issue of making sure that we don't build power plants, chemical plants, expose people to dangerous, toxic, carcinogenic materials. These are things that are very important. And I have tried very hard to raise the awareness on these issues and also to make sure that companies take responsibility at the end of the life cycle of their products for the removal of them. So I was able to get a bill passed last year, probably the first in the country, on what they call employer extended producer responsibility when it comes to pharmaceuticals and materials, so that if you have an illness and you get a prescription and you get well and you've still got half a bottle of some medication, what do people generally do? Well, they generally throw them down the toilet or throw them out. They end up in a landfill. They end up in our water supply. I did a measure that said to the pharmaceutical industry, hey guys, you have a choice here. Either I can force you to go along with this program, or you can tell me what program will work best for you, achieving this goal of having you take back at the end of the life cycle of this product, your pharmaceuticals and your needles, what they call sharps. And lo and behold, we sat down at the table and we came to an agreement. Now, this was not something that happened overnight and by a miracle. Local communities were actually starting to pass their own ordinances. And these companies didn't want to have to comply with 58 different county ordinances and 400 different city ordinances. So they were interested in making a deal. And that's how we got to it. So sometimes you got to know just when to strike, and you've got to try to bring people to the table so they feel that they've got some skin in the game, as they say.
You know, now we're going to hear from someone else who really has worked so closely with you, and she is a very close friend of yours, but she understands the whole skin in the game business and how to remain tenacious. So let's hear from our next guest, someone you know very well.
Hello, I'm LA County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, and more importantly, I am a longtime friend and a big fan of Hannah-Beth Jackson. You know, no less a superhero than Wonder Woman once said, if it means interfering in an outdated system to help just one woman, man, or child, I'm willing to. And throughout her career, Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson has used her superpowers to build new systems and models to help so many Californians. I mean, the list is very long, but a little short piece of it. During her time in the legislature, she's been a super advocate for early childhood education access to justice, ending gun violence, protecting the environment, and of course, women's equality, women's equality, women's equality. Hannah-Beth is the author of the California Fair Pay Act, the landmark legislation to strengthen California's equal pay law, the author of the first in the nation legislation requiring more women to be allowed to serve on corporate boards, and so much more. Paid family leave. I mean, it's just the difference that you have made, Hannah-Beth, is just astounding. You are a Wonder Woman, ably interfering with outdated systems to help California's men, women, and children. You know, they asked me to tell a little story about you, and there are so many, but of course, my favorite is I take full credit for your even being in the legislature, because I say, and of course, memory is always self-serving, that I at least was one of the people to talk you into it. If so, it could be listed as one of my greatest contributions to California and to California law. You have been astoundingly successful, fierce, determined, really understanding what is needed, speaking up for that which is right, and most importantly, justice and equality. It's an amazing legacy, and Sacramento is really going to miss you, even if, as I suspect, you won't miss Sacramento that much. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and enjoy every minute that comes from this moment on. Much love.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.
This is interesting because she said something that was surprising. We all know you're not shy about expressing your beliefs, your values, your opinions, but you needed someone to convince you to run. Why?
Well, you know, like so many women, we are reluctant to believe that we're ready. And this is something that really continues to be a problem. Well, maybe I need a few more years of seasoning. Most men, they say, I want this job. They don't consider whether or not they're qualified, whether they have the experience. But women tend to need to be asked. And I think that's changing. But I wasn't quite sure I was ready. In fact, one of my favorite stories is having lunch with a group of my local friends who urged me not to run because I was too liberal. There was no way I could ever win. But Sheila said, are you kidding? And in fact, I met with her down in Santa Monica. I remember this like it was yesterday. We had lunch at her favorite Italian restaurant where the tablecloth was butcher paper. She handed me a pen and she said, now write this down. This is who you're going to call. This is what you're going to do, and you're going to run. And I never looked back. And Sheila's always been one of my sheroes. You know, the paid family leave work that I did was actually built on her first in the nation paid family leave program back in 2002 or 2003. So, and I always give her credit because she really was a trailblazer. And we all really do stand on the shoulders of those who came before us and have to remember that. None of us is indispensable, even though we might like to think so.
But it's a wonderful feeling when you have someone like that who has power, authority, and knowledge, and then opens, you know, provides the pathway forward, the connection, the name to call, the strategy to adopt, the fertile field that you can till because she knows you so well. You know, one thing I did to prepare, and we have prepared for this because we wanted to do justice to you, Hannah-Beth, and better understanding the complexity of the role that you've played for the past years. And I learned that there are about 6,000 bills in a 2-year session that come across the legislative desk, and there are 60 committees. And so I have a question for you. They cover all kinds of topics, banking and commerce and housing and health and education and the environment and, of course, the pandemic. So where was the biggest learning curve for you?
Oh, well, the biggest learning curve was in the need to delegate. You can't read 6,000 bills. It's just impossible. And if you don't serve on the committee in which the bill is heard and sort of adjusted and corrected and modified, you don't see the bill until it's on the floor and you have to vote for it. So the hardest thing for me was recognizing I couldn't read every bill, and that some of the bills were on issues that I had never seen before. Or technicalities that I was not familiar with. So the key is and I think for all of us, if we're really honest about it, is if you have good staff. Really, it's your staff that makes you successful. I spent a lot of time with my staff. I told them the things that I was looking for, gave them basic parameters of what I felt was appropriate, what my goals were. Justice, Sheila mentioned early child care and education. We call it ECE now, early care and education. So important. I mean, I just can't believe in it strongly enough that right from infancy, we need to be able to give these young people the developmental opportunities that they need to be successful in life. Because if they don't get them early, they will not recover. So it's the analogy I draw is, for example, it's when you have a horse race. If you've got horses that are still in the paddock when the race starts, they're never going to catch up. And part of the whole system of criminal justice that we've seen, the people who end up in that system, they're people who never got a fair shake in their early lives. And so if we want to stop spending money putting people away and in jail and in prison and have no hope for a good life, the way you do that is you start and you give early care and education. You start at the earliest possible ages with quality childcare, quality nutrition, quality education for everybody. And
Right.
so once my staff understood that, the bills that came through on education, a committee I did serve on higher ed when I was in the assembly, and briefly served on the education subcommittee in the Senate, but it really was staff who'd say, this bill is up your alley. This is what you want. Or they would say, this bill doesn't go far enough. This is where the good part and the bad part is. And then I would have to sometimes make very quick decisions. But that's the nature of the beast.
Let me ask you one last question then. Given how much you have accomplished and your staff you must keep them moving constantly, but is there one area in which you feel your work is unfinished, where it's tempting to say, I wish I could have pushed this through? Is there one area where you had some passion but didn't have the time to take, drill through?
Well, of course, as the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the issue of privacy comes to my committee. And with technology and all today, even though we passed the groundbreaking legislation both in California and then with this initiative that has passed, it's completely inadequate. So as a general area, I wish I were able to participate more in this whole realm of how do we protect people's privacy. But I did have a bill up last year that would have come full circle on work I'd been working on for years, and there was a photo of it. Back when I was in the assembly, I worked with Jackie Spear, Congresswoman Jackie Spear, on the whole issue of women paying more for the same products as. So not only are we paid less for our work, but we pay more for various products, and that we have to end that discrimination. It's called the pink tax. And I brought the bill, I introduced it in February, but then we had the pandemic and I had to jettison a bunch of bills. That was going to be a heavy lift. That bill needs work and it's going to take a few years to get just right so we can pass it. And that's one that I left on the table that I wish I had been able to push further.
That's really important.
Yeah, sorry, Lois. Hopefully one of the women that you've inspired and who is taking your place in the legislature will maybe champion that cause for you. So I know Monique Limon is somebody that we are very proud to have, and I'm sure you're proud to have follow in your footsteps. So, we were wondering though, Wonder Woman, how you managed all of these accomplishments, the bills, the committees, all while raising, and this is a challenge that women have, we women have, while raising a beautiful, strong, feminist daughter. Well, we went right to the source.
Oh.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to attend this event tonight honoring my mom. I wish I could be there in person, and goodness knows that we are trying to move back there. But for tonight, I say hello to you from a chilly Chicago. I was asked to speak briefly about what it was like to have Hannah-Beth Jackson as a working mom and now as a grandma, and to share some brief anecdotes with you. So to get started, I would be lying if I told you that I made being a working parent easy for my mom. As early as age 6, I am infamous for listing all of the things other girls' mothers did. Serve as room parent, make homemade meatballs, sew the costumes for the school play. And then I turned to my mom and I said, "Mom, what can you do?" I gave my mom a run for her money as a teenager as well when she decided to run for the state assembly. One night, she was supposed to meet then sitting President Bill Clinton, who would later be my college graduation speaker. And my response was, "Yeah, so?" And my mom didn't meet Bill Clinton that night. She came home to spend the evening with me. Well, my mom has been in the public eye for as long as I can remember now, and we've had to share her on weekends with parades and people stopping us on the street or at dinner to chat. I have never once doubted that when push comes to shove, my dad and I always came first. That's why she sent me handwritten notes every single day when I was at summer camp. That's why 7.5 years ago, when I called her in labor with my daughter, I knew that she would jump on the first red eye to Washington, D.C., so that she could try and be there to help me deliver Hillary Rose. That's why she left a family wedding in Boston early to fly to Chicago when my then 3-week-old son was hospitalized. And that's why she's the first person I call when anything important happens in my life. Whether she's sunbathing in the backyard or presiding over the floor of the state Senate, she will always pick up. And I'm now raising a little Hannah-Beth, and God willing, I will survive her adolescence and watch her grow up to fight for what's right the way her grandma has. And, you know, my mom may not have been room parent, and she may not be able to make meatballs, and I can assure you that she cannot sew. But not too many girls get to say that their mom changed the world the way my mom has, and I couldn't be prouder of her. Love you, Mom.
Beautiful. Just
Well,
so beautiful.
let you have a moment. What is your reaction to that, Hannah-Beth? Because I know what my reaction was when I first saw it.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, there's nothing more important than your family. And there's nothing more important that a parent can do in life than love their children. And I am so proud of my daughter. She was absolutely impossible, ran me through the ringer, and I deserved every bit of it. But she is a very special young woman, and probably my greatest accomplishment, my proudest accomplishment, is to have raised such a wonderful, wonderful woman and mother, the best. And of course, you know, we love our children for them, but for the children that they have given us to be able to dote over and spoil rotten. And she has been just a spectacular gift that I cannot imagine not having to endure during her adolescence. And actually the story, Jenny, goes a little bit more like this. And it was probably one of the most important experiences I had when I became a legislator. we had, after about 6 weeks in the legislature, we did a retreat, a caucus retreat. Instead of coming home on Thursday, we went someplace and, did a rah-rah kind of thing. And it was Saturday morning. We were about to, the retreat was over, and I got a knock on my door, and it was one of my colleagues said, "Hey, I hear you love basketball. I got 2 tickets tonight to go to the Lakers game and sit in Jerry Buss's box." He's the owner. Somebody said, "Hey, the president's going to be here." It was Bill Clinton. He's going to do an event, and he'd like to meet with some of the legislators in advance. I said, "No, I haven't been home. I want to go home and be with my family." And so I went home and I recited that to Jenny, and she looked at me without blinking an eye, and she said, "And your point is?" And that was really important, because at the end of the day, the real question is, "Hey, Mom, what's for dinner?" Right? And so that kept me, I think, focused. It kept me grounded. And I have never taken myself too seriously since that moment.
Wow.
It's a great story.
Yeah, you did raise a strong daughter. And, one of my earliest memories of you, you may remember this, is I remember seeing you in the newspaper, and you had a little child, and you were sharing some of the challenges of having, raising a young child and being a very busy lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
How did you manage that? How did you balance that? I get that you prioritize your family, but sometimes there's a lot, well, there is always a lot of give and take.
Well, I remember back a long, long time ago when I was growing up, there was a show called The Dick Cavett Show. And he was interviewing Katharine Hepburn. And this is a long time ago. I remember it was one of those epiphanal moments. We all have them in our lives when the light bulb goes off. And he was saying to her, "Well, Katharine, you've had this fabulous career. You've done all these amazing things, but you've never married or had a family." And she said, "Well, Dick, you can't have it all." and I thought, well, yes, you can. And so I tried, and I think, frankly, a lot of women of my generation and today's women are trying to do everything. And it means you don't sleep enough. You don't take care of yourself enough. But we want all these things. We want to be able to raise our families and give them our love and attention and affection, and the same with our partners, and also be good at our work and to be successful. And that's part of the challenge. That's part of the reason that I've been so committed to changing the culture of the 21st century workplace to accommodate all these things for women and for men as well. We need these guys to come in and help do the dishes or make dinner or do the grocery shopping without asking, what do we need in the house? I mean, and being able to do breakfast in the morning, if for God forbid you want to go out for a run or you want to sleep for extra 10 minutes, let's share those responsibilities, because we are sharing the work responsibilities. So that's part of what I've understood is needed today. And I know my daughter does the same thing. She practices law, and she's trying to balance all those things. And her husband is a very, very participatory husband. He also is committed to being there to raise his kids. It isn't easy in today's world. It's very complicated. It's very, and with technology and kids being on the internet and all the challenges that they have to grow up to be healthy and happy people, this is a complicated world. And I think to the extent that we can try to help make it better and easier for all of us, I think that is part of the responsibility I saw in the work that I did in the legislature.
Well, on that note, I want you to know that my husband did a very fine job ironing that cape. But,
Well done, Frank.
Definitely, and Lois will join me as we start to wrap this up. And you have left an indelible mark on our community and on our consciousness, and how we are able to go forward, how these, your grandchildren are in a different world now, thanks to you. And that's not exaggerating in terms of what you've done with pay equity and everything else. And we are grateful that you allowed us to take these moments tonight to celebrate you and to honor you, because I know you don't really like that, but we must do that because you have inspired and continue to inspire in every action that you take, Hannah-Beth. And now we're just so happy that you're going to be able to spend all that time with those beautiful grandchildren.
Well, I hope so. I adore them. They really are. They're a joy. I mean, and when I talk to groups and I talk to people, there are a lot of grandparents out there, and I say to them, isn't this the best job in the world? And I've never seen one of them go.
Hannah-Beth, tonight has been such a pleasure. You've been so candid with us. And I feel that we have been following the thread as you've talked about your early life through those teenage years. You didn't mention the bouffant hairdo. We let that slide. But seriously, you have been consistent and coherent. The same person who stood up for herself to get to play baseball, and the same person who fights for equality and fairness. And we so appreciate everything you've done for all of us. So thank you very much for being our Wonder Woman, and we're so happy to honor you tonight.
Well, thank you for the honor, and thank you for doing this. I am humbled and a little bit embarrassed, but if it's inspired anybody, and you know, you can do this. We can all do this, and I hope we do, because there's a lot of work to do ahead. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We all love you. Luce?
Thank you. What a wonderful tribute and program this evening. It's truly a joy to be part of this incredible organization that Hannah-Beth was integral to starting. I hope, Senator Jackson, that you felt the love, the admiration, and respect that we all have for you and your work, especially in the legislature. As a working mom in elected office, you're a great role model for me. And we thank you for all of your continued support of SBWPC.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, I do want to thank everyone for attending tonight. I have to give a very special thank you to the team behind the scenes who organized this event, starting with Catherine Sweeson, Paula Lopez, Lois Phillips, Lucille Ramirez, and more. And thank you to Gavin Roy for the technical support. And thank you to all our honorees, special guests, and attendees. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we can't do this work without all of you. So please go renew your membership, bring along some new members, or make a donation to help support our efforts. We have the Fund for a Feminist Future. And please visit sbwpc.org. We have a lot of work to do in 2021 and beyond, and we need your continued support. Have a great evening, everyone. Stay safe and well, and thank you for joining us for COSMOPOLITICS 2020.
Thank you, everybody.